Hey guys, today we are going to be starting chapter 2 and we're going to be talking about section 2.1 here. And in this section, we talk about measuring economic activity. And there are multiple ways that countries can measure their economic activity. And we're going to talk about a few of those today. Economic growth is what every country wants. They want to be growing. And economic growth refers to a steady increase in the production of goods and services in an economic system. So that is what we want. So how do we figure out if we have economic growth? Well, there are a few ways that we can track that. The first one is gross domestic product, or GDP. And that is the total value of all final goods and services produced in a country during any given year. Here is an example of 1 year of GDP comparisons between different countries. As you can see, the US there is at the top with $14.3 trillion worth, with China behind us with 8.8. Now, when you're talking about different components of GDP, there are 4 major categories of economic activity. One is consumer spending, and that includes food, clothing, housing, and other stuff. The second one is business spending, so whether they're purchasing buildings or equipment or items for inventory. The third is going to be government spending, and that could be to pay for employees or to buy supplies for the offices. And the fourth is exports of a country. So some goods and services are not included in the GDP. GDP does not include the value of work that you do for yourself, such if you go out and mow your own grass, that's not going to be included into the GDP. Also, let's say you go and you babysit for your neighbor and she pays you $30. That's not going to be considered in the GDP unless, of course, you are reporting that on your taxes, which I assume you're not. So it has to be reported. So any kind of like illegal activities as well, that would not be included in the GDP. And then also one of the keywords there was final goods and services. So just so things aren't counted twice, like if I'm selling lumber to a company that's going to use it to make picnic tables, the lumber I sold to them would not be included in the GDP until it was a final product. So the actual sale of the picnic table then would be included in the GDP. So if GDP increases from year to year, that is usually a sign that the economy is growing and is healthy. And another way using the GDP is to compare things is you can look at the GDP per capita, which is the output per person. So if we look, look at this chart here too. If you notice in the third column, it has GDP per capita there. So that's where it's taking the GDP and dividing it by the total population. So you're kind of getting like GDP per person there, because obviously if you look at the US and China there, our GDP per capita is much higher than China because China has a lot more people that they're dividing by as well. So that's something that is looked at. And you can also compare gross domestic product by area and population and all different aspects. Okay, other ways that we can check and see if we are having economic growth within our country. The next way is to look at employment. Okay, so one way we can do that is by looking at the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is the portion of people in the labor force who are not working. And to be considered unemployed, you have to be looking for work and willing to work but unable to find a job. Okay, so looking for work and willing to work but unable to find a job. So let's say that I win the lottery tomorrow and I quit my job. I would not be considered in the unemployment rate because I would not be looking for work or willing to work because I just won the lottery. Okay, so it has to be people that are actually willing to work and looking for work, and that's who would be considered in the unemployment rate. So, like retired people, they're not included in that unemployment rate either. Another way that we can look at this is through productivity. Productivity is the production output in relation to a unit of input, such as a worker. So improvements in capital resource, equipment and technology, training workers, having better management techniques. This can all increase your output per worker, which can increase your productivity. Okay, another way that we can see how our economy is doing and see if we have economic growth is to look at consumer spending. Consumer spending is the money that you earn and spend, and it is a big factor of economic growth as well. So each day people receive money from their job or their participation in production. That's considered personal income. Personal income refers to any salaries or wages, so money you make from a job. It could include investment income. So if you invested in a company and you're getting a good return on it, that's personal income. Also, any kind of government payments to individuals as well. So, like retired people who are getting Social Security, that's going to be included in personal income. So, people use their personal income to buy stuff, and that is tracked as well. So, if consumer spending is increasing, that could be a sure sign that our economic is growing, or our economy is growing. And one way they can track that is through retail sales and tracking retail sales. Retail sales are the sales of durable and non-durable goods bought by consumers, and these retail sales are an indicator of a general consumer spending pattern in the economy. And these are a lot of times they classify these into different areas. They'll have like food and clothing, automobiles, housing, and they'll keep track of them and to see if they're going up and down. And if they're going up, that's a sign that the economy is doing well. Okay, so we talked about ways to measure the economy, gross domestic product, talked about unemployment, the unemployment rate, productivity, personal income with consumer spending. So this is 2-1. You now need to go and do the assignment, which is in Google Classroom. Thanks and have a great day.